Brighton's finest.
Juice.
I was just 19 years old. We actually were disciples of what Malcolm X was saying, but we just, I guess you could say, we were poetic disciples of Malcolm in a sense, because it was on his birthday that we started, May 19th, 1968. And we were in the park in Harlem, and it was a park that had a lot of black cultural events and many revolutionary performances by different artists like Nina Simone and quite a few other artists performed in that particular park. It's in the middle of Harlem, 122nd and 5th Avenue. And Last Poets was an effort. David Nelson is one of the original members as well, and it was his idea to bring some poets together to provide an example for black people as to how much we needed to have unity within our race, because we're all our necks are being stepped on by the system, and we need to get that foot off our necks. So we were in a bit of a battle against the system, and we wanted to show that unity would make that battle a lot easier. So David had this idea that he would bring some poets from different walks of life together to be on stage to say this, have the same message, but obviously be from different places, and that would be a good example for black folks to see how we need to join forces to come together to get rid of this problem that we had. And so that was the idea. So the Last Poets was a group of poets who actually never read poetry. We would perform the poetry, and we performed it with the drums, a conga drummer in the background. So we had a conga drummer who knew how to play, because we had tried a few drummers before, and even we tried a guitar player. We didn't know what kind of background we were going to use at first, but we decided to go with the drum because that's ancient, and because that's like the first communications device. And so we were I guess you could say, three griots or something, telling the story, using the drum to highlight our story, or accenting the story with the drum. And the group just became popular, from the very first performance. I mean, we had something from the very, very first time we walked on stage. People seemed to appreciate us, and we started working. Then we had a place called the East Wind, and from there we did workshops and continued to perform. And then when the album came out in 1970, that was with a different set of guys. That was myself, Umar bin Hassan, and a brother named Jalal Nuruddin. And we put out an album, and it sold 1 million copies in 1970 by word of mouth. There was no Facebook or Twitter or any computers. Computers weren't popular at that time. So it was strictly word of mouth, and the Last Poets were off and running. I mean, and even today, 50 years later, we're still working, going all over the world, performing, and there are quite a number of people who have been, I guess you could say, hold us in reverence, because they say that we had a lot to do with motivating and inspiring them to bring about change in their own world, in their own communities. And I appreciate that very much, because you never really know how you're affecting other people until they let you know. But we have been very fortunate, and to be here still 50 years later, to be able to echo our sounds and continue to do what we do, I consider it a blessing.
Well, I mean, obviously 50 years ago is a long time ago, and for many people listening, they wouldn't have any experience of that era, living in that era, knowing much about it.
Well, it was on the heels of the Civil Rights Movement. Martin Luther King had just been killed on April 4th of 1968, which really kind of pushed me over the edge, because I was a nice colored guy up until then, and I became very radical when they killed Dr. King. I wanted to do something serious because I just felt it was an insult to all black people that this man standing on a platform of nonviolence could be shot down so viciously. Yeah. And I really wanted I wanted to pick up a gun and do something probably crazy, but instead I made my mouth the gun and I made my words bullets. So I guess that's a safer way to express yourself.
Yeah. Yes. And you're still here, thankfully.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah.
No bullet holes.
No. One of the aspects of your poetry, the words that you talked on record, and in live performance. Well, some of it, I think, was to do with the fact that although, America was waking up to an extent to the problems of racism and segregation and all that, still in the late 60s, a lot of people were still not really coming forward, if that's the right way to put it. There was a bit of self-doubt, a bit of lack of confidence, maybe.
We had a whole issue against and that word has become very, very popular in the hip-hop world, and consequently you have a whole lot of people who aren't black who refer to themselves as... but that was a term that was used about people that did not want to get on the same page, who did not want to organize, who didn't want to be a part of a unit, and they wanted to do their own thing, and they were more or less disruptive. So we had poems to try to stomp out that particular character in our community. So many of our poems address that issue, that particular character.
Okay. So also, and I'm going to get back to the politics in a second, but just to delve back into time, into that late 60s, musically, and I think philosophically as well, you were apparently interested in musicians like John Coltrane.
Oh, yes. They were inspirational in how we even did our poetry.
Yeah. Okay. Just the way they express themselves on their instruments is what you mean.
Yes, exactly. As a matter of fact, I had a creative writing workshop, and what I would simply do is I would take a track by John Coltrane, a track like Cool Say Mama or Ascension, and I would play it and tell my participants to write. I say, write what you think he's saying with his horn. I said, because all these jazz musicians are really poets, but they're poets in sound. They don't use words. So they give you a title of a particular track, and then they play that title. And us as poets dealing with words, we should try to interpret those sounds in word. And that was one of the motivations for me to get quite a number of folks to write poetry.
Amazing stuff. And it was in 1970, Alan Douglas, who
Yes, he's the one that produced the very first album, which had words on the inside cover, and I think we were the first group in America to do that. I know that the Beatles were the first group in Europe to do it on Sgt. Pepper's, but we were the first group in America, I do believe, to put words on the inside cover of an album. Okay. And I thought that was a very smart move because I thought we were talking so fast, people couldn't understand us, so this would be a much better way to read along with what we were saying, and then you could pick up the words.
Yeah, definitely. And is it true that you had to be convinced to go into a studio to make a record?
Yeah, I had to be convinced because we had originally said we did not want to record because the first group with Garland Kane and David. Kane made a statement that if we recorded, we were going to be in the bucket of crap with everybody else, and we'll be looked at as recording artists, and we won't be revolutionary poets.
Yeah.
So I was down with that because I really wanted to be a revolutionary poet. I wasn't trying to be a recording artist. But as time went on, and we got more popular in the Harlem community, the associates, the young men who were called our East Wind Associates, they were the young men who took care of the business end of our organization. They thought it was time to record, and they had this connection with Alan Douglas. And my revolutionary move, I suppose, was I said, well, I'm not going downtown. I'm not going to Midtown to record for no white man. And so he came uptown. He came uptown, and we went to a school, in a classroom, and we, Umar did a poem, Jalal did a poem, and I did a poem. And then he said, well, listen, I'm ready to record when you guys are ready. And then we recorded, and it was very basic, very simple, very natural, and we're off and running.
And you sold 1 million copies?
1 million copies by word of mouth.
I just wanted to ask you quickly, when you come over here to do the gig, it's basically you three, isn't it? Yourself,
yes, myself,
Don, and
Umar, and Babatunde, yes.
Yeah. Any other percussionists or anybody else on the stage, or just you three?
When we come over there, I don't know how they're going to arrange it with the music. I do know that Umar and I and Babatunde will be up front on stage performing. And if we're just performing it to the conga drum, that's fine with me because that's how we roll anyway. But they may want to highlight some of the tracks as well. I don't know how this is going to manifest, but I do know that my part is to at least be ready to be able to do my poetry.
Sure. Okay. Well, it's going to be amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. I've never seen you perform before. Exciting for me. And
well, that's good. I'm happy. And I think it'll be exciting for everybody else because the one thing about it, see, we're poets of a different kind because poetry before I even got into poetry was quiet. people came to poetry readings and they kind of whispered, they sipped tea and ate crumpets, and then we took that, we killed that, and we made it rowdy, we made it loud, we made it boisterous, and so that has become our mantle, and so it's going to be a performance, and it's very fiery, and I appreciate the fire, I appreciate what we've done, and I appreciate what we're still able to do.
Brighton's finest.
Juice.